Recording in progress.
Well, hello, parents. This is Craig Coles from Pro College Planners. First of all, could everybody that's on give me a thumbs up that they can hear me, or at least the ones that are attending? I just need to see a couple thumbs up. Good. Okay, so we've got audio, so that's good news. So I want to make sure this is going. I'm doing this from the comfort of the home. So I'm in here in Dallas, Texas. I want to welcome you to Pro College Planners. My partner Douglas Hager is off this week, so I am going to be doing a replay of one of the core of what we do. So first off, I want to see how many people we got in the room. We got a lot more since I just been talking. That's great. Okay, so um, again, procollegeplanners.com. Who we are is we're a financial firm working in the college arena. So what we do is we help parents achieve the highest possible goal of paying the least amount of tuition and getting their kids into the right schools. There's an academic, social, and financial part of what we do. We take care of a lot of the financial, some of the academic, and some of the social. So we have two sides to our organization that helps you guys, your parents out there, understand the best schools that your kids could possibly go to. Now, we're not like a school counselor that does it from a perspective of finding the right school, although we do help you do that. We have a team that does that, but we also help you understand how to pay for it, which a lot of parents come to talk to us about. So where are we at? We're in Dallas, Texas, in the Dallas Metroplex, but we serve nationwide. So Our offices are right at Richardson area on 75 and the George Bush Turnpike area, if anybody's familiar with the Richardson area. We have been there for a couple of years now, and ever since the beginning of the pandemic, we've seen an increase in the interest in the services that we've done over the past couple of years. Actually, it's been an amazing year with all the parents, because they've been asking a lot of questions that should I go to school, or should my child go to school? That's something that's very important. They want to know. All right, so what is it that we're going to talk about this evening? Well, the main focus of this webinar is going to talk to you about some ideas that you could use in developing a strategy for not only sending your kid to the right school, your child, but also learn how to pay for it the best way possible. Okay, there are discounts, there are ways that you can get merit scholarships, but the main thing that most parents come to look at is why they come to us. They just want to have a future for themselves, so they don't have to worry about paying all this money and not, they feel like they wasted it, which I would never say that's a truth with your child, but you don't want to feel like you overpaid for what you get. It's like an airline seat. We'll talk about that in the webinar, but airline seats are a commodity. And what we want you guys to know is that the person sitting next to you maybe paid less than you did for your seat, and you're going both the same destination. Fortunately, colleges don't do it that way. So main thing I want you to think about is what if you thought about college and what you thought today about college turned out not to be true. Okay? So in other words, you're thinking about college and the things that happen and paying for it and the costs and everything, and you sit there and go, look, I really want to just pay the best I can because I want my child to have the best. But I don't really want to go overboard with it because it's not the right, I feel like the colleges don't have my child's best interest, and that's happened. We have one parent right now that their child is switching a college from West Coast to East Coast. Didn't fit him the first year. So these are the things that we help you figure out in the process of determining what college you should possibly go to and what price you should pay. And this is very important for you guys, all of you, to understand. So I'm doing all the technical work tonight, so forgive me if if it becomes a little bit discombobulated, because I'm doing this live. So we have a lot of people in attendance tonight. If anybody wants to put in the chat box where you're from, I'd like to see where you're from, at least where you're dialing in from, and we're going to do a few informal polls. Then we're going to get right into the meat of this thing. So there's a little chat box at the bottom. If you just open that up, if you wouldn't mind, just tell me where you're at. All right, I got two from, I got Cindy from Illinois, Iowa, Chicago. That's awesome. A couple from Texas. That's fantastic. All right. So we got a good crowd tonight. Oh, Katy, Texas. There we go. We got Frisco right up the road from me. That's awesome. Fantastic. I love seeing where everybody's from. It's just great to see. Like I said, we serve nationwide, so we want to make you guys feel comfortable and feel like you're part of our group. And we always like to have smaller, intimate meetings anyway for the parents, even though we end up with a large group anyway. So let me launch a poll here real quick. Give me a second here. And I am going to get this going. All right, first poll I want to do real quick is what year is your child? And as you can see, just pick one or multiple. If you have one senior, one junior, go ahead and do that too. And I see a couple of choices coming in right now. Okay, 1, 4, all right. Wow, okay, senior and sophomore. So, oh wow, a couple middle schoolers. Hey, can't start too early in my book. All right, so we have a bunch of, look at that, senior, junior, sophomore, middle school. That's awesome. Okay, so let's take another poll here real quick. And let's do, okay, I want to look at your main area of main concern. So I like to get a feel for why you came here, so we can tailor this possibly at the end. So why don't you express your main concerns, multiple choice. It's okay to do this. If you want to select multiple things, we're happy to address what we can in the webinar. And you're going to find there's a lot of content that we go through. But go ahead and put in your main concerns. what you think might be worth it. There we go. Finally popped through. Wasn't popping through. Okay, so it looks like we haven't saved enough. Okay, how to pick the best school for my child. How to pay for college. See, it's always typically the same. So, and hey, for Paige from Grand Prairie, that's awesome. I just saw you pop in down there. This is awesome. How to avoid debt is one. Okay, that's going to go along with how to pay for college too, right? So, all right. So that's the majority of y'all. How to pick the best school. You want to make sure that you have a life after you pay for school is basically what it says. So that's a good thing. That's something else. Okay. All right. Right now, I want to scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. How do you feel in preparation for being ready for college? Now, some of you in middle school, don't worry. If you don't know the answer, that's okay. But just, it's a single choice. Pick where you, think. 10, I got this nailed. I know 100% I'm coming out of this on the backside with everything I've ever wanted. Where 1 is, kind of don't know what school, to go to. I don't know how to pay for it. I have zero idea what I'm doing. So go ahead and put that in there. Okay. So most of you are kind of in the middle at a 5. Okay, so you're about a feeling of a 5. And so it sounds like we need to tailor this information to you guys that really are concerned about paying for college, coming out at the end, and making sure they're going to the right school at the same time. So those are usually the top 3 that we usually encounter. I want you guys to know that we're going to present a lot of information here tonight. I'm going to start the video of Doug talking because he does an excellent job of presenting this. I started at a certain point. Now, there's a couple things when you watch this, okay? First off is there's going to be a point where I'm going to, at the end, where I'm going to cut it off, number 1, and then we're going to get into the Q&A. So I'll try and I usually catch that point in this video because we just recorded this recently. And then some tools that we'll do at the end that we can help you with in your college endeavor process, even just getting started, or even if you're seniors, you're probably already in the point where you're getting the admissions letters, which happen in March, and then bursar's office statements, or the acceptance, then you got to go to the bursar's office eventually and pay for your tuition. So, all right. So I'm going to switch screens here. I'm going to go blank for a minute. I'm going to get this thing started for you guys. And then I will be back here. It's only about 40 or 50 minutes. I think you'll really enjoy it. And then we'll talk at the end.
So why do you see a house here? Okay. The house was the representation historically of freedom. If you had your house paid off, then you could, vision living in retirement debt free. But that has not been the case in more recent years. What we have found is that more and more seniors are carrying a mortgage when they retire, many of which think they're never going to actually be able to pay that off. And the reason for this is very simple. It is becoming very apparent that a lot of what has derailed retirement plans has been the price of sending children to expensive colleges. And this comes from AARP. And it is a significant problem. You can see here the debt that's out there, 1.56 trillion in student loans on 45 million borrowers. The average debt is almost $30,000. And the highest group of individuals that are still paying student debt are those that are over 60. You can see 3 million people over the age of 60 are still paying those student loans. And it has become even more apparent that the gap between the total cost of college and the financial aid that is available may still be too big of a gap for most people at income levels to bear. They're not helping enough or people aren't at least finding the discounts enough to be able to get that cost to an affordable level. In addition to that, as you can see here, the foreclosure, they've actually seen a correlation between a higher rate of foreclosures in neighborhoods following higher student enrollment in years prior. So clearly, this is an impact that has affected many, many people. And it gives us a clear understanding of the challenge that many families, some of you are going to, maybe be more challenged with this financially than others, are going to face as they're children are moving into high school and eventually picking college. And the consequence of these financial troubles obviously can ripple across the economy, leading to property value loss and jobs. So what is this called? We call this the late stage college funding pressure cooker. It's taking on too much, paying for colleges that are too expensive, taking on too much debt, hurting savings and retirement plans because families are just unprepared to absorb the burden of what college has ended up costing. And it's hard to think of this as a major financial planning challenge because all you want to do is send your kid to school, and a good school, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But there has to be an understanding of all of the forces that are working against you here. It's a game, and you have to learn how to play it. A rundown of some of the challenges, although there's more. The students and yourselves as parents feel this academic and social pressure of competition. The colleges are actively targeting your children so they can reject more of them, which makes them look better and more elusive and prestigious. By the way, the original Latin root word for prestige meant to deceive, if that doesn't tell you something. There's impending deadlines that lead to tension, rash decisions, and there's a lot of families, especially students, are uninformed about the actual cost, the degree earning power, and ultimately the average number of years it's going to take to graduate. And I know that you've got help through schools. The school counselors are there, but most are just not trained to help families figure this out, how to pay. They've got lists and tools that help to maybe help establish a basis of career. They might be able to search schools that, again, sound good, but the reason that they're picking those schools may be more about the name and the prestigiousness, looks good to the school, feels good if students get into it. But they're outnumbered. They don't really have a degree in this field. Most of the time, their degree is in social work. They may touch FAFSA, which we'll get into. But for the most part, they themselves don't really know what they don't know, and they can't help in the consulting of the financial aspect of it. It's very, very likely that's not something they're even looking at when they're trying to find these good schools, and families just lack the knowledge and guidance. And ultimately, this pressure cooker can lead to some pretty unhappy results. I mean, families will act rashly. Parents tap into home equity. They take out large second mortgages. As we saw earlier, many of those mortgages aren't paid off, not because they don't want to, but because they can't. By the time they get to their retirement, they're trying to divert retirement funds, which has tax consequences, and they lose money they don't plan to, unknowingly or unnecessarily, in the way that they're approaching it. The glaring truth is that, again, it's just a lack of knowledge and guidance, which is why, in all the years that we've worked with families, both in college and other types of financial planning type of goals, we have spent a lot of time seeing firsthand the impacts of this, and also understood the lack of information that's out there to help. So what we're going to talk about tonight is the 6 ways, just 6 of the ways, and there's more than that you can cut the cost of college. Okay. Raise your hand if you're stressed about this topic. There's the, if you know where the raise hand button is. All right. I'm seeing a bunch of hands going up. You raise your hand if there's any time in your life that you feel that you've kind of gone into something that you didn't know about and maybe ended up regretting a financial mistake about it. Okay. I'm seeing hands go up on that too. Or you paid more than you should for something, you found out later. Or again, with something, used the wrong assets, wrong time. Okay. There's a lot of different things that can go on with this. And if this topic isn't handled correctly, it ultimately makes the job of saving, investing, retirement, and other issues that much harder. So what we're offering here is an opportunity to learn some of the ways in which you can understand the system, the forces that are against you, some ways that you can find those highly coveted discounts that you're looking for if you understand how the system works. And ultimately, we want to help families know not only where the coupons are, but also how you choose to pay for college has a tremendous impact on your financial outcome. No matter what level of financial wealth you are, no matter how big your circle of wealth is, this finite amount of money you're going to have, again, nobody wants to waste money unknowingly or unnecessarily, which leads us to the question about the stress that you're leading to. And not only maybe you're stressed about the financial, but how many of you are also worried about getting your child into a great college? Okay, that's going to be good for them. Lots of hands are going up. Yeah. It's understandable that you might be nervous about this because, again, once they get into that college, how many of you are nervous about actually how you're going to pay for that? Again, a lot of these great schools, sometimes they sound like they're the more expensive schools. Yes, the cost of college has been climbing as unfortunately as incomes have remained fairly stagnant. So again, after tonight, I want to make sure you understand some ways in which you can get some answers and some immediate answers on where you are, some reality and understanding of your situation, and some ways that you can look at getting that cost down. But because here's the other thing, the news is not all bad on the front, okay? It is actually possible, I know it doesn't seem likely, that you can lower your stress and cut the cost of college if you know how to be a good college shopper, a savvy college shopper, and this information will help you. So what are we going to cover tonight? Well, obviously this is the problem you feel, that it's too expensive, that it's hard to decide what schools are going to be best for your child. We're going to talk about how to reduce the cost of college and actually find the money to pay for college, and ultimately how you pay. If you do it correctly, it is actually possible to structure a way in which you can come out ahead or equal to, which we like to call the retirement scholarship. So, and we're going to talk more about that. But the first thing we have to understand is what our rules are in this game. Okay. And what I mean by our rules, I mean your family dynamic. Okay. Students' job number one is academics. It's to understand options. It's to prepare and prep for college admissions. And here's a big one. It's to gain self-awareness. And that is very difficult for a teenager. And raise your hand if you wonder if your teenager has any self-awareness. I mean, they have big dreams, emotional time. They've got lots of huge goals. And cost and impact and long-term, um, you know, impact of decisions is not generally one of them, okay? One of the things I like to talk about is gain self-awareness. We live in a day and age of social media. Everybody puts out there, Gen Z, Gen Y, they throw everything out there without any consideration of the consequences. You need to know this. Make sure social media is cleaned up well before college. The colleges are looking at that and making a judgment call on who your child is. So social media is great as a way to share and to accentuate benefits, but it can also be a problem if what's out there unfortunately changes or taints the image of your child. They also have to get in the right mindset. College is going to be a time of growth and a time of maturity. Now, you as a parent, you have to take the lead in this process. And I hear this all the time. Well, my child gets to pick, it's their thing. Great, but you're going to be the one paying. So you have to take the lead. You have the most to lose in this. You have to understand that the decisions they need as a co-pilot have to have guidance. You need to understand your estimated family contribution, which I'm going to talk more about. You have to apply for all the financial aid you possibly can get. Before you do any of this, you have to assess your retirement readiness. Again, we can help you with that, because if you're going to spend dollars that you desperately need to save for your future, or use assets that you plan to use for college, you need to know if the impact of that is going to put you in a situation where it's not going, where you may now be regretting that later. You ultimately need to calculate the cash flow that you're going to spend for college and where you're going to find the money. And then you and your child can come together and work on those selection of right fit colleges that match. Work on the assessment of scholarship opportunities. Compare the award offers you get, and even appeal, and eventually transition. Okay, the cost has gone up. You can see here some of the ominous details. Just 39% of students graduate within 4 years. That's important to know. We're going to talk more about graduation rates. And the average cost of college has tripled in 20 years. So again, you already know the stressful news. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I will say, as you can see there in the fine print, with proper planning, there is a way to overcome this. So what do? Okay, we focus on college planning. We created a unique firm in college planning business that not only helps families find the right schools and select the schools and prepare for tests and be in a position where the child is going to be positioned great academically, financially, and socially. But we also help families find money to pay for college without affecting your lifestyle. Find money that you're unknowingly or unnecessarily losing. That allows you to create wealth more efficiently. That allows you to have dollars you didn't think you necessarily had that can help to pay for college. There are actually 5 major areas of loss that people have financially: how they pay their mortgage, the taxes that they have to pay, the qualified plans that they save money into, all major capital purchases, which include anything really that you have to finance with that you can't pay for in one payment. And of course, the biggest one of that is college. And ultimately, most people have money going out the door that they don't even know they're losing That's why it's unknowingly, but unnecessarily mean that it can be fixed. And the best part is you can do it without making your lifestyle any harder than it is, so that you can still be able to do the things you want to do. Okay. As I talked about tonight, we're going to talk about how to cut the price of college, but we're also going to learn the basic principles on how to finance college. And finance does not necessarily mean what you may think it means. Okay, so one thing I do want to say is, what's a gap year? I want to talk about that. Gap years are a big question I get. They can be a positive. You can see some things here, some pros and cons on the screen. If your child is ready now, if they want to be on the same schedule as friends, if they're worried about financial loss of working years, maybe travel is something they want to do, but you can still do it. Those are cons against it. Of course, if they're not quite ready and they need more time to prepare, they need to find a passion, they need to gain professional experience. Those can be all reasons to do a gap year. But the one thing I want to prepare you is, if you do a gap year, you definitely want to check with the schools. You want to find out what kind of deposit they're going to require you to pay. And you're also going to want to understand their aid packages, because the aid package may be changed and it may not be what you were offered when you originally went in. So again, there's a lot of things to be aware of it. I get a lot of questions about that. I want to address it. So now we're going to run through these 6 stages of college. I want to make sure that I'm still on here. Yep, everything good. We're live, so I want to make sure that technology is working right. All right, so the 6 areas you're going to see here: understanding the realities of pricing, determining if you can qualify for financial aid and how, using net price calculators, the 4 main sources of college money, the generosity of colleges and who gives what, and of course, 4-year graduation rates that I've already mentioned. So let's talk about that college pricing. It's like airline tickets. I bought an airline ticket the other day. It was insane. Trying to fly to Phoenix for a conference. The best economic price I could get was almost $1,000. That's insane. You go to it, but yet somebody else flying to Phoenix may find that they've got a price that they can get there for only $44. And somebody else on my same plane might have been able to get my ticket, who knows, a week before with better seat. They may have been able to get it for half that price. That's airline pricing for you. Everybody's used to getting a different price, but it gets you something sometimes for that. You might even get first class or a free drink, or at least sit away from the bathroom or more legroom. You don't get anything more for paying more for college. Understand that. If a college is more expensive, it has no impact on your child at the school or their future. They don't have guarantees of access to extra perks like smaller class sizes. They don't get more face time with professors. They don't get any opportunity to be paid more because of a bachelor's degree of a college that costs them more. There is zero advantage to paying more, which is why it's absolutely, let's see here. Do I have a problem? Oh, is it don't? Okay. It is absolutely an issue. Somebody just flagged me with something that might be going on in technology, so I apologize for the interruption there. But it's absolutely impossible that I'm absolutely critical that you understand how to get those discounts that you possibly can. Okay. All right. So price changes. Let's take a look at the impact here. As you can see, just on an inflationary standpoint, you can see the things that we need in life are getting more and more expensive. And college and textbooks are right there at the top. The things we don't need, like TVs, computers. I mean, yes, we function with them, but we can live without them. It's not in that category of food, clothing, water, shelter. Those things that are discretionary, those have been going down in price, which is why the government tells us inflation hasn't been that high. But we all know what we're feeling. And the college cost impact has been one of the big ones. How do you know if you're going to get money from colleges? Well, here's a really good cheat sheet, okay? It's not what your child is at the school they're graduating from in terms of their credentials, okay? That helps. If a child is at a school and they're like, well, what's my class ranking? That can help. But predominantly what matters is where that child's credentials are going to rank of the class that's coming into the college. So what are we referring to here? We're talking to understanding what the averages are of the SAT and ACT scores of that college. What the averages are of the GPA of the incoming kids, and finding a school that your child is going to be at the front of the pack of that. If they're not in the front of the pack, you can just about forget getting any money, much less potentially getting in. And you can see here, A top 25% of admitted student pool, if you can afford 75 to 100%, are going to get the most merit aid available. If you can afford less than that, you're going to get the most grant aid available. If you're in the top 50%, you're going to get some merit aid and some grant money, but not as much. If you are in the middle 50 to bottom, you are likely, if you can pay, you can full amount, you can get in. But if you can't, likely your child's going to get gapped. So you want to make sure that you're looking at schools that where your child is at the front of the pack. It's not about the name recognition. It's not about the brand. If they get into a great school in the middle of the pack, they're not going to get anything better for that. Even the credential and the resume, there's plenty of surveys out there. They're better going to a school where they are at the front of the pack. They're going to get more support. They're going to get better experience, and they're definitely going to help you and them get more money. Okay. And here's the reality. Because of that, most schools are on sale. The problem is families create unnecessary competition. Most families will try to compete to get into the same 50 schools. In fact, 85% of students apply to the same 50 schools. Just like any business, if you have all the people in the line going out the door, you're not going to give away coupons. But most schools out there, really good schools, very well-connected schools, but maybe less marketed, less well-known schools, they have to compete and give money. In fact, 58% of students at public universities across the country do not pay full price, and 88% of students in private schools don't pay full price. And you can take away from this, it's not just A students that are getting those scholarships and grants. It's just about everybody, especially when you have the self-awareness of picking the schools that fit who you are best. And as a matter of fact, the average discount across the board that's rising is about 56% at private colleges. So if you take a look at the impact of that, a $45,000 school, you have to understand the difference between what they're charging for to attend there and what the actual amount you're really going to pay is. So a $45,000 school may, in fact, on average, only cost you $19,800. So you need to make sure that you are understanding what the true price is, which we'll talk about. And that means that most schools are in a buyer's market, except for the elite schools that make it a game to reject as many people as possible. Only at the top of the rankings do they have that type of advantage. In fact, the reality is 98% of colleges out there are concerned about hitting quota. And those schools are going to be the ones that are going to work harder to try to do anything they can. And that especially includes discounts to get your child to come there. The second cost-cutting idea is, will you even qualify? And it's an important question because, there's no cutoff for a type of income. One of the big myths out there is I make too much to get financial aid. Couldn't be further from the truth. At some schools, it may have an impact and you may not get anything. At other schools, you may still get it. There is no set number, and it would certainly make it easier if we knew that. And these financial aid formulas are unfortunately just way too complex to generate a yes/no answer. So what you have to start by doing is get your expected family contribution. The expected family contribution, otherwise known as the EFC, is tied to two main formulas, although there are some others. The federal formula that most people know is the free application for federal student aid. That is FAFSA, and that's almost every school at least starts with that. And then about 200 to 400, mostly private schools, use a secondary form called the CSS profile that really just determines how they're going to use their own money. And so when you look at these formulas, it's best to actually, so I've got some middle school families in here and some freshmen, sophomore. It is important you begin looking at what an EFC would be for you potentially as early as you possibly can, as early as freshman year or even earlier, because it's going to begin to give you an idea of what schools expect you to pay, because that's what the EFC is. It is essentially what the school thinks you need to come out of pocket before they're going to help you with any support based on your financial condition. So families will often have to pay more than their EFC for college, not including merit aid, but because most schools do not cover 100% of that demonstrated need, which is the gap between their price and that EFC. But it is important that, knowing this information will help you to begin to identify the most generous schools. So here's an example of a family that makes a modest income, $55,000, has just a few investments, and you'll see that that would result in both calculations to be pretty equal, that they would expect it to come up with about $2,500 before any aid consideration. Now, if we were to take a look at a family that has considerably more, you're going to see that that is going to result in a considerably higher EFC. And there is no cap. There's no amount. A family that has an extremely high income could have an EFC in the hundreds of thousands. But you can see here that we do now start to see a difference in the numbers between the CSS profile and the federal FAFSA one, because they look at different things. They count different metrics, and this family had a few more things that showed up on the profile. Now, as of now, if you have 2 kids in college, raise your hand if you've got someone in college right now and maybe another child going, well, it looks we had no seniors, so maybe nobody going next year. So this may be going away. They made some law changes, but as of right now, if you have 2 kids in school at the same time, they actually cut the EFC for FAFSA by the number of kids in college. And for profile, they cut it for about 40%, so a little bit less than that divisor if you have 2 kids in. And what does that matter? Because as you can see on the previous page, we're talking about a $35,000 EFC. That's how much a family would have to come out of pocket at a school before they get aid. Well, with 2 kids in college, it gets reduced to 16. So a family that didn't qualify for financial aid with 1 kid in college actually might qualify for financial aid with 2 kids in college. So either way, it's probably important for a family to still look at a school that's going to be generous with merit aid in this circumstance because of what they have to come out of pocket. It's also important to see what's going to happen with these rules, because some changes they did last year in the beginning of 2021, effective for 2024, actually took this away. So our fingers are crossed. I know a lot of people are fighting to get that back because it actually hurts the people that need it the most. So how does EFC work? If the school's tuition, the cost is lower than the EFC, you can see no demonstrated aid, and therefore a school like this, you'd want to see if that school would be generous in merit aid, which has nothing to do with your financial situation. Now this school here, you can see their EFC was 35,000, the school's 58,000. They are going to have a 23,000 demonstrated need, and maybe a handful of schools in this country do actually give 100%. It's about 6 dozen of that demonstrated need, so that could be a $23,000 write-off, but you're still potentially paying $35,000 for school here. So again, it would still be in probably your best interest to find a school that also gives generous merit aid in this case, if you do want to pay less than, say, $35,000 a year. So in summary, a small EFC, you're going to want to look for schools that offer generous need-based aid, and a large EFC, you're going to want to look for schools that give generous merit aid to many students. The next thing we're going to talk about is net price calculators. And what are net price calculators? This really critical if you're trying to avoid budget busting schools. It's going to give you what your true cost of a particular school is going to be before your child falls in love with it. And I've seen a lot of disaster stories here where children emotionally fall in love with a school and then ultimately find out later the affordability is a problem. I actually had a family that got 3 years into NYU before they got cut off because the kid fell in love with the school, and they didn't get to finish at NYU, but they were saddled with debt. By the way, NYU, notoriously one of the most stingy colleges in the country in any fashion. So turning to a net price calculator is going to allow you to potentially save tens of thousands of dollars, real money, by focusing your efforts from the beginning on schools that are going to be more generous. It takes the cost of school minus scholarships and grants, and that gives you net price. Another thing I'd say, raise your hand if you've ever started to consider only looking at schools that are cheaper. Okay, I've got some hands going up. This is very important for you to understand, because when you start to look at those lists and you say, I'm going to look at schools that are cheaper, what's the first thing you do? You start looking, well, I'm going to go to state schools, public schools, because they're cheaper. Because I looked at the private schools and those private schools are more expensive. Understand this. It is not the cost of the school that's published that you need to be concerned with, because that, as you can see here, isn't the net price. The thing you need to do is run these net price calculators, because you'll find, and I'll show you some examples that come up here, that in many cases, a private school can actually end up being as at the same cost or less expensive than those supposedly cheap public schools, because they have more money to give in discounts. So do not do your search just based on looking at tuition priced. You have to understand this one is critical, okay? And you got to do your net price detective work, because what applicants are going to capture the best rewards in an institution? What kind of grade point averages or test scores does it take for a student to get a greater award from a specific school? With this tool, families can actually manipulate figures. They can find out if it makes sense to take an SAT or ACT again. Does that higher, is there going to be a threshold in which they're going to cross into that top 25%, and boom, maybe it's only an extra point and bam, thousands and thousands of dollars. Maybe working to get a slightly higher GPA matters. Listen, with so much money at stake, it is critical that you take the time to use these calculators strategically. Now, looking ahead, I'm going to show that we got some things that can help you with that, because again, between the detective work and the lack of time most people have, some people are just saying, well, show me and help me get that. So I'm going to come back. We'll talk about that later. Now, beware of bad net price calculators. This is the other risk of doing your own research, is that there are some really poor net price calculators that colleges publish for themselves, even though they're required by law to publish that. So here's a way of knowing if it's a bad one. If it's going to rely only on the federal calculator template and just asks a couple of questions, it doesn't ask for real information off your tax return, it doesn't calculate merit awards, walk away. That's not going to be a good calculator, and it's not going to give you real information. So if a school has published that, then you really do need to get the help from the resources that are out there. Maybe it's resources like ours that are going to actually show you the net price calculations for those various schools. Fourth cost-cutting idea is going to be understanding those main sources of college money. And there's four main ones. You've got the federal government, you've got private scholarships, you've got state governments, and colleges. We're going to start with the federal. The main source of free money for financial from the federal government is what's called the Pell Grant. And this one is the biggest, by far the biggest program out there, but it's also one of the least helpful and least easy to qualify for. The maximum Pell Grant award right now is only $6,095, and you have to have a gross family income of $25,000 or less. As a matter of fact, that 92% of Pell Grant recipients have household adjusted gross incomes under 50. I have seen some exceptions on that, but unfortunately, most people do not qualify from an income standpoint. And if you do, you generally really, really need it. That being said, the federal government wants you to know that they are more than happy to help out. If you're shut out of this program, you can certainly apply for federal student loans because there's no income limits for that. But regardless, not saying that that's the road we want to go down, understand that regardless, if you do not file FAFSA, and more families are not filing FAFSA, regardless of their income, high or low, you will not have access to any federal help and many times merit aid. So file FAFSA. If I can get that message across, make sure you file FAFSA. I don't care if you make $1 million a year, still file FAFSA, because it may impact your ability to get aid anywhere. Now, state government aid is a tricky one. It runs out quickly. It's definitely one of the smaller amounts. It tends to go fast, and they tend to really give a lot of that money based on financial need as well. However, ironically, in the South, a lot of states in the South do actually give state aid based on merit. So don't know why it's worked out that way. So my recommendation again is you can look for information on that, get some help, or you can also look at the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. I know it's a mouthful. National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators can actually tell you what different states are going to get. But again, got to file FAFSA and do it earlier, because these programs do tend to run out of money. Private scholarships can be a trap. A lot of people kind of try to get private scholarships. It is a trap for those that need it. And sadly, it seems like, once again, if you need the money, they make it harder, because when you are getting money for financial need based, they count many sources of income that you get. And that means if you end up getting a private scholarship, they may reduce the financial aid they give you. So if you are qualifying for need-based aid at a school, make sure you understand from that school first before you start going out to get private scholarships, because it actually may just be a wash and be a lot of work that doesn't help you and takes money away. The other thing is, many of the national scholarships you look for are incredibly competitive. The Coca-Cola one is 25 times more selective than getting into Stanford. If you want to get private scholarships, these national search engines are just mediocre at best. You want to go look locally. You're going to have better odds by going to your school, to libraries, to parent workplaces, local papers, school counselors, etc. They're not on the radar. They're going to be less known. And if you want an even better tip for maximizing the ability to win it, look for scholarships that require an essay. I have in my documents that you can get from us tonight, a paper on how to write an essay that an admissions director will love. Well, students don't like writing essays, but however, because of that, it means the applicant pool goes down. And if the applicant pool goes down, that means you have a better chance of winning. So if you are willing, if your child is willing to do that essay and write a good one, I've seen situations where they are the only one that applied to a particular local scholarship. Boom, winner. All right. There's other institutional scholarships you need to be aware of. Capex.com is a great place to look for this. So you can find out what institutional scholarships are coming from different colleges and for various things. And many of these scholarships, they're not competitive. They are truly, if you achieve it, you get it. Things like the Eagle Scout Award. If you're an Eagle Scout, you get it. If you're a National Merit Scholar, you get the National Merit Scholar Award. These are great. A lot of vocational scholarships out there for, for artistic ability, volunteerism, entrepreneurship, writing, and so much more. I just had a client of ours get almost $20,000 for playing bass guitar. The college wanted to bring them into the school for their musical talent, and they got $20,000 off in scholarships on top of other scholarships to go to basically what was a $65,000 school. With the help and work that was gone into this, they're going to be going to that school for under $20,000. So just amazing number of scholarships that are out there. Again, it could be particular in things like philosophy, physics, nursing. Great place to look, great resource. Institutional merit aid, again, if it's probably not going to be the biggest source of income, it might be the hardest place to qualify. So again, for most affluent families, and generally most of anybody, the biggest place you're going to find money from is the colleges themselves. The vast majority of schools actually offer merit money to their students. So how are you going to find that? Well, you're going to find that by reducing that list. So if you look at the 85% of kids applying in the same 50 schools, a lot of those schools are going to be your same big research schools that are well done. But you have to understand that those big research schools, like the Universities of Minnesota, the University of Texas, the Ohio State University, places like that, great schools. But where they really shine is their graduate programs. And that's actually what they focus on. Teaching undergrads is not even priority one. It's not priority two. It's arguably priority three. I actually know a professor that taught at one of those schools and got scolded because he was seen spending time talking to a student on the quad, because they are expected at those schools to teach graduate students and sell research. That's what they do. And they're fantastic at it. So if you can get into those schools for their PhD programs and their graduate programs, unbelievable for resumes. But you'll find that a lot of times the bachelor degree doesn't give a lot of help or tread when they get out to the workforce near as much, and they also aren't getting the support that they would expect to get because they're being taught by fellow students. You've heard of teaching assistants. This is an example. So you really want to find the discounts and your child wants more support. Smaller schools, master's level universities, colleges, they provide much better discounts and a lot better support to undergrads than those research universities typically do. Now, raise your hand if you got a stellar athlete in the house. Bank it on the future payroll. No hands up so far. Okay, but probably do have some athletes. And I get a lot of questions about scholarships for athleticism. It's really the last main source of money. And as you can see here, even with football or women's track, some of the bigger ones that have these scholarship players, the percentage that actually get a scholarship is very, very low. So they're generally not as generous as regular financial aid or merit scholarships that kids can earn. So you can go to scholarshipstats.com and learn a lot about those different availability of scholarships that are out there. And also know that we always like, if you follow football or basketball, you hear about the full ride scholarship. It's like, yes, my child's great at sports. They're going to get this full ride scholarship. That exists only in a handful of sports. They're called head count sports, and they do include football and basketball for men and women. As you can see here, women's volleyball, women's golf, women's tennis. Everything else is what's known as an equivalency sport. So there is potentially scholarships available for those sports, but in many cases, it's going to be fairly minimal. So it's going to be something, it's going to be a bonus. It's not going to be a transcendent change to your financial situation. But if you can get it, hey, congratulations. The fifth cost-cutting idea is the research or the generosity of colleges. Now, You can see here, and we run these reports for clients all the time to give them an idea of what kind of award can you actually get from the school. This comes back to the net price calculators and understanding what your child can get based on their credentials. You can see here, Yale is a fantastic need-based school, 100% of need-based. They're one of those 6 dozen schools that give money if you need it. Again, you got to qualify to get in, which is the hard part. So if you can qualify and get need-based aid, you've hit the academic lottery. However, if you can't qualify for financial aid, look down there at the bottom right. The average non-need merit aid from Yale doesn't exist. They don't give money for academic credentials hardly at all. As a matter of fact, the average need-based loan is $2,400. The average need-based scholarship or grant is $55,000, but they don't even talk about what they give in terms of merit. I've seen people get merit aid from these Ivy League schools, but you've got to be the top of the top of the top. And in many cases, I've seen valedictorians with the best grades ever not only not get scholarships, but not even get into these schools. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of competition. And ultimately, having that name on your resume has very little impact in future outcome. There have been plenty of studies of that. Now look at Hendrix College. This is an example of a school that has to try harder to get students. And they're in Arkansas. It's a beautiful campus. But you can see here that if you need financial aid, they give 90% of that need covered. But what they also give, which is really important, is $27,500 in average non-need-based aid. So the average need-based aid is $38,000, and the average non-need aid is $27,000. Well, that equates to almost $60,000, which is, of course, almost a full write-off of that. If you can get both, that's something I'm going to talk to you about a little bit more in a bit. So 6 cost-cutting idea, check your 4-year graduation rates. I said this before. This is a big one for families. Most of you think, hey, my kid goes to school. It's a 4-year program. You look at the rankings list and you say, hey, what's the graduation rate? Here's one of those tricks they play. When you look at U.S. News and World Report and you look at their graduation rates, they're not giving you 4-year graduation rates. They're giving you 6-year graduation rates. That's a little misleading, wouldn't you say? Highly. It's one of many ways they mislead. So if you look at a graduation rate of here, Princeton, well, they would publish that they have a 96.9% graduation rate. Well, that's great, but it's over 6 years. That's a lot of money to pay Princeton for 6 years. Now, in Princeton's defense, the graduation rate of 4 is 87.8. So it's still very, very good. But here's the thing you have to understand. At a school that you get financial aid from, like this next one, San Diego State University, they would boast that they have a 66% graduation rate, when in reality, in 4 years, it's only 1 in 3. The thing is that aid I was talking about is generally only provided on a 4-year basis. So if your child ends up in a 5th or 6th year, you need to be very concerned about the impact of that, because in many cases, that will be full price. And I have seen many situations where the 5th and 6th year combined cost more than the first 4. So when you're having these conversations, it's important to look at the graduation rates of schools to make sure that your child won't be there longer than you anticipated. So let's go back to the conversation about private versus public. So here's an example of private school for $60,000 and a public school worth $30,000. Again, I saw hands go up. Many of you would say, well, the public school at $30,000 is cheaper. That's where I'm going to go. However, the EFC is $25,000 in this, which means a demonstrated need at the private school of $35,000 and only $5,000 at the public school. Now, as I said, there are a handful of schools out there that give 100% need met. So it could be one of those schools, or even Hendrix that gives 90. And they're going to give a lot of that money. Again, another thing you need to know is, does a school that gives you financial aid give it to you in free money, gift aid, or they give it to you in loans? Some schools say, hey, here's a bunch of help, but it's all loans. That's not really help. That's kicking the can down the road. So in this example, more generous school would give 90% gift aid or free money, and 10% of that aid would be loans. That means that ultimately, with an EFC of $25,000, they're covering everything. There's a little bit of loan that has to be taken. So the true cost of the school is going to be $28,500 a year. Many people would never look at the school because they thought it was $60,000 and they didn't think about what the true cost would be. Now, here's the public school. They only give 50% of need met. They also only cover 50% of that with gift aid. So that means this child is going to have to take $2,500 of need back. They're also going to have to take a bunch of loans. When all said and done, the cost of this public schools was $28,250. Now, in this example, it's $250 cheaper still than the private school. But when you talk about class sizes, four-year graduation rates, of which are better at private schools, and you talk about overall experience, the private school may be the better choice by a long shot. But again, without understanding the true cost of colleges, it's one that most families skip over. And I talked about what if you could get the need-based aid and the merit. Well, private school A and private and public college here that I showed do not. You can see here that the need gift aid is $31,500 of college A, and the merit package is $20,000, which means that they would give the need-based aid of $31,000 only because it's higher. And that's what a lot of schools will do. I know this is getting a little confusing. I'm happy to answer questions about this, but many schools, what they will do is they'll look and say, well, you qualify for this much need-based aid, this much merit aid, this is higher, this is the one we're giving you because it covers the other one, okay? Notice on here, private school B is a $65,000 school, but you can see here the net price of that school is actually only $15,600. Why is that? Well, what would you choose? College A for $28,500, public college for $27,500, or private college B for $15,600. Again, assuming all things were equal and all three schools were beloved. Well, naturally, you would probably pick college B. Why? It's called stacking. And this is something that is rare out there, but most people don't even know about. What it says is there are schools that are so generous that they are willing to calculate the need-based aid and the merit aid completely separately, and whatever you qualify for, you get. One of the colleges that we were looking at with a student, that is why a $65,000 school ended up costing ultimately only $12,500, because they actually appealed after that and got more money on a $65,000 school, because the school said you qualify for gift aid from both need and merit. So you have to understand how that game works. So if we go back to the $150,000 family with a $31,000 EFC, well, the EFC initially was 31. We worked with them to move things around and got the EFC down to 12, because they count certain things on those forms. They don't count others. Ultimately, that was a difference in financial aid right there, which was $17,800 a year. That saved them $71,000 over 4 years. Incredible discount. The family, and you can see here another example. This is actually from a client. This is a stacking type of aid. They got $19,000 faculty scholarship. They got $14,450 in need-based aid. They did have to take a little bit of a loan, and parents took a little bit, were told, okay, if you don't want to come out of pocket, you can take a loan. But on a $58,900 school, they're only going to be borrowing about $20,000 or paying $20,000 out of pocket, because they got stacked aid. It's a tremendously valuable, important to know. Ultimately, that $34,500 free money, need plus merit, cost the school, the family, when they're all said and done, only $18,000. So let's go back, talk about it. You need to find out your EFC, whether you got a middle schooler, a freshman, sophomore, find out your EFC now, understand what counts on an EFC and what doesn't count. And if the earlier you start, the earlier it is to maybe change things financially so that you can get a lower EFC. That's what we help with. The second thing is finding out the schools out there that give you the most generous aid. Okay, what scholarships are out there and what are you going to qualify for? What does your child need to do? Now, net price, while I said you need to figure out EFC and financial planning for college as early as possible, the reality is with net prices, you're going to get more accurate information the further they are in college, because since it is taking into consideration things like the amount of, the grade point average, the test scores, clearly you're not going to have that stuff early on in college. So it is something to get an idea of when you begin to look at schools, and you can see what you could potentially qualify for given what they do. But it's also good to keep revisiting that along with the EFC to make sure that that money, they're going to qualify for it at the end. But see, this is just the start. Now I'm going to transition, because how you really save, if we look at the big iceberg, reducing the cost, the free money is the part you see. You want to get those discounts. You want to get those scholarships. Absolutely. Go after that. You need to apply for financial aid early. But the real problem is how you pay. It's understanding that the colleges messed this all up. 10 years ago, they actually took over student loans and created a cash grab. And this is what really got us angry, because we saw the beginning impact of this, especially on my generation, Gen X, as we became parents of college-age kids. And I talked about financing, the definition. And remember I said earlier, we help find money families are losing unknowingly or unnecessarily. The word finance actually means to purchase anything. Most people think it means to borrow, but you finance everything you buy. Yes, you can borrow and pay interest. That is a form of financing. But you also can use your cash flow and your savings. But when you do, you give up the ability for it to continuously compound and earn interest. And not knowing the difference or how to do this correctly can actually end up costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. So how should we pay for college? Well, let's start with the four main sources of fund. We talked about it. You got to get the free money, scholarships, grants, tax credits. You got to found money. This is where we find the money that we call wealth transfers, where families are losing money. They don't even know, but it's not even for lifestyle. It's just being lost because of the way they do things. It's opportunity cost based. So you find every dollar you bring back to the table makes this easier. Then there's the borrowed money that you can get between parents and students. And there's also the saved money that you can accumulate in things like college savings accounts, 529s, et cetera. Now, how do you get financial aid? Well, parent income is significant. That's one of the biggest, if not the biggest. Parent and child non-retirement assets are important. Qualifying for aid may just mean the free money that you get, as I mentioned, or it may be just borrowed money they offered. School selection is the key driver in receiving free money. There's actually 7 factors. So a lot of times people think, well, I make too much money. This is a myth. There are 7 factors that go into it: the income, the parent's age, the parent's assets, the number of people in the household. If you have in-laws living with you, if you have grandparents living with you, all of these factors go into changing what your EFC could be. It's very important to note that. The students that you have in college, the student income, and the student assets. Before you do anything, you have to know 2 things. Number one, you got to know how much it's going to cost. You got to do these calculators. You really got to do this work, or get the help to do this work. The second thing you have to understand is the impact on your other goals: retirement, children's education for other children, or the lifestyle that you're trying to live. Okay, the typical approach is people will just take their savings and cash flow and try to pay for it. And when they find out they don't have enough, then they'll look for the opportunities to borrow money. Then they'll do things like adding another income, or then finally look for financial aid. And so the thing is, there's 3 types of people. There's the people that spend and go into debt all the time. There's the people that save all the time, but then they live at the zero line because they spend that money and lose the future interest. When it comes to understanding your money, you have to understand the 8th wonder of the world, as Einstein called it, which is compound interest. There is no reason to sell your money if it makes sense to let the assets you have continue to grow and continue to get that compounding interest. Raise your hand if you understand what compounding interest is. It only works if it's continuous and it keeps compounding. Okay. So that's because, if it grows and it grows, and you can borrow, let's say you could borrow money at 3%, but your money was making 5%. That's spread. And most people think about the cost of borrowing at 3% or the cost of borrowing at 5%. Heck, if you can borrow 5%, but your money can keep growing at 5%, it's a wash. But you maintain the luck. And what do I mean by luck? That's your liquidity. That's your use of your money. That's your control of your money. And that's the knowledge that you understand how money works. So ultimately, this is how we create money for retirement and for college. So if we go back to this family that I talked about that had a $15,000 cost, well, they followed the advice of going in the right order. The first thing they did is they applied for the financial aid. That's how they got a $65,000 school to cost $15,000. The second, we helped them find money. They became cash flow efficient. Then we looked for those credit opportunities. And in their case, they actually looked and said, you know what? We're going to borrow and deplete our assets last. Because if you look at this situation on screen here, you can see the $62,400 they had for college that they could grow at 6%. They were able to borrow at 5%. And over the 20 years, they're actually going to pay $36,000 in interest on that student loan, but they're going to make $144,000 in growth. And ultimately, what does that mean? It's $110,000 difference, which is more than it cost them for college in the first place. But it's all about using their money wisely. And that's what we call a retirement scholarship refund. The other thing is, people are like, I don't like debt. I want to pay it off early. Well, okay. Why not? When you have the luck, you have the control, you have the liquidity. So look at this. If by, say, year 9, they've earned $44,000 in interest and they only owe $41,000 left in the student loans, then pay off the student loans with the interest they earned, ultimately still keeping all the money they had before, compounding for their retirement, which, by the way, is calculation of an impact that really could be the difference between spending $300,000 for school and having a $700,000 loss in your retirement by not understanding the impact of that opportunity cost. But the key is, when you have the money and you keep the money, you're in control. Now, where do you save the money? Well, it can go in various places. You can see up here on charts. You can go into college funds, stocks, IRAs, insurance, annuity, lots of different places where they want to put it to get it to grow. And 529s, the challenge with them is, they're great. A lot of people use them. I don't mind them because, again, the tax-free, the growth. But if you get close to retiring to college, if you're within 5 years of college, you should have your money out of investments in the 529 anyway, because now you can't afford what's going on in the markets today, taking that loss down. And they also have fees in the 529s. But here's the worst part. They interrupt compounding interest. If you're getting 8 to 10% on your 529, congratulations. But it stops the day you spend it for college. So when it comes to planning, and if you have the time, or you still need more money than you have in the 529, then taking a full consideration of your plan may make sense and keep more money for you. Again, this is about the big question. Do you have luck? And what is luck? If you can take that away tonight, liquidity, use, control of your money, and knowledge. That's what we're here to teach. So part of that luck is understanding to change the order. So instead of going out there and using your savings and assets, first thing you do is apply for financial aid. Second thing you do is become cash flow efficient. Sound familiar? It's what this family did. The third is that you determine your credit opportunities, figure out if there's a good spread for you and it makes sense, and where you can make more money and lose less, and ultimately deplete your assets last. Because here's the thing about money. Once it's spent, it's gone forever. $100,000 to school, you're never getting that back. So plan today to do it effectively. Understand you're going to finance everything you buy, including college. Leverage other people's money if it makes sense, or it allows you to keep you and continue to have good luck. And understand that traditional methods of paying for college that you've heard may be actually depleting your future wealth. And again, one thing I want you also to think about, if what you thought you knew was true, about paying for college, or about paying for your mortgage, or paying or saving for retirement, if that turned out to be untrue for your situation, when would you want to know? Obviously, the best time to know is now. So let's go back to this. Let's talk about the help. People need help. They don't have time. College is very complex. There's a lot of things that people are doing that they think they're doing right, and it's costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars of wealth. Some people don't need that. Some people are like, whatever. Okay, but I don't know, even the wealthiest business owners I know got there because they didn't like wasting money. Then there's the people that can't afford to lose money. Okay, that's even worse when you get to retirement and you're trying to figure out what to do. So let's have a talk, 30-minute talk. It's a gift to you for being on this call. Ask questions about your specific situation, about your child, talk about where they want to go, what it takes, learn a little bit more about some of the things that we talked about tonight, even though I went fast. But here's an important one to think about. Just for being here tonight, you have access to what we call the College Money Report. I want to run through this very quickly. So you want to know before you go, okay, how much do you think colleges think you can afford to pay? That's your EFC. You can find it out. Will your child qualify for grants or scholarships at a particular school? How much will you be expected to pay out of pocket for their school? And what's next? Okay, this is something in the report. So it's going to help you understand the cost of attendance of various schools. It's going to help you understand the EFC. It's going to help you understand what need is versus need-based scholarships versus merit-based scholarships, and ultimately net costs, so you can begin to start to budget for what college is actually going to cost you. You can see here that it'll report kind of what the EFC is, the expected family contribution based on your situation, on the various main formulas. So the FAFSA, the CSS profile, and some institutional ones that some schools use. And it's going to tell you, hey, you're not going to be eligible for need-based grants at most public schools, or you are. You're not going to be eligible for it at private schools, or you are, or you might be or may not be eligible for merit-based scholarships. And then because the report allows you to put in up to 3 schools, and all of you have 3 schools that you're curious about. I mean, maybe it's a school you went to and you're just, hey, what if my kid goes there? What would that cost? Or, we're a fan of the school. Again, this is not the time that you're making the perfect college selection discussion, but just throw 3 schools in and get an idea of what those costs of those top 3 choices will be. The report allows you to peek behind the curtain and understand. We talked about those credentials, that first chart. If you're in the top 25%, well, you can see it here because you can see at the schools what the medium 50% GPA is, what the medium 50% SAT scores, what the medium 50% ACT scores is. I see that there is a chat on here, a question. I will get to that, I promise you, if you hold tight, because I definitely want to. I just want to make sure I'm wrapping this up as well. But it's going to allow you to see how much money a school has for the child. But it's also going to give you some alternatives. Hey, here's some affordable colleges you might be thinking of. Here's some value colleges you might be thinking of. And here's the most expensive college that you might be able to still qualify for. So again, what did I say before? It is free. The report is free. The report is free. The report is free. It's free. By the way, did I mention it's free? Okay. We actually charge $67 to those that don't attend or they ask for this. It's a $297 value, but it's absolutely nothing to you. You're already on the call. You took the time to be here tonight. So get the information that's going to be helpful because it's going to be helping you. How much can you afford for, in this case, Catherine's college? Or how do we ensure Catherine graduates and it's manageable, the amount of loans that might be having to be paid? How do we get student loan debt without robbing retirement? How do we get more free money for college? What about student loans? All of these are very, very important questions. I've also got some other free stuff. I talked about how to write an essay. If you're going to be looking at student scholarship or private scholarships, that's important. If you're going to be trying to get in schools, that's important. How do you evaluate an awards letter? Did you know you can appeal? You can actually go back to schools and say, and there's a there's an etiquette to this, but you can basically say, I think I deserve more money. And it works. You have to know how to do it. You also have to understand if you're getting a good award, and you have to understand how to predict a student's success. The 6 key factors that predict a student's success is a critical document. It's based on a Gallup and Purdue University poll, and it is shocking the amount of misunderstanding that people have about what quantifies a good fit school and the ultimate outcome that students have. Highly recommend it. All that stuff's available to you because I put it in a Dropbox so you can download yourself. So you're looking at over $1,000 in value for everything we're offering here. But again, we're offering to you for free for attending. And ultimately, the confidence to pay for top colleges at low prices, how to play this college tuition game, which if you haven't figured out tonight in what I've said that this is a game, you're probably a little distracted because they are definitely, again, taking advantage of those that are coming into schools. And by the way, huge enrollment drop this year, which means you have more power than ever to control the situation and get those discounts and make it a buyer's market. You got to know what the college expect you to pay, or create your own, be your own bank to pay for college and get your tuition back. Know that you made the best decision today, that's going to allow you and your child to have an extraordinary future and minimize mistakes later and have peace of mind. Okay. We're talking about hundreds of time back in your life. Okay. We just got an email from our partner from a child that's attending Tulane. They just paid their first payment, $20,000 for the first payment. That's just a semester. They didn't do the college planning on this. They are for the second child. We've already talked, and another child just got $50,000 in discounts to SMU. Okay, so here's the links to the
All right, everybody can hear me now, and let me make sure my audio is working. Yep, okay. Listen, I'm super glad that you guys hung around. I know it's a little bit late running over this evening. I know it's spring break for a lot of you that have kids in school. It's either this past week or next week, and everybody's gearing up for this. Let me share a couple things with you before we go, though, real quick, that Doug was talking about the links. I'm going to make it a little bit simpler for you guys. So let me go on this and go full screen. Okay, this is our website. This is where you're going to go to get the free stuff we talked about. First thing is, let me just give you the 30-minute talk. Where do you go for the 30-minute conversation? You're going to go right up here to free counseling. And once you hit this free counseling link, all you do is go right down here and book a time. That's all you got to do. So that's why I put the link to our website. Hit the big red button that says free counseling. Go right down here and you can book a quick 30-minute conversation with Veronica, our team member. Looks like we have a couple spots already booked up. That's changed recently. Okay. So this is where you want to go to get a time with us for about 30 minutes just to have a conversation. It's complimentary. You don't have to do anything. We're just there to give you good advice about our service. Okay. Next thing is let me show you the trick on this one. So normally when you go to services, we have our products in here on this page. And this is where we kind of give you an idea of what our costs are. If you go here, like we talked about, this is that $67 money report that Doug talked about that we don't charge for. Let me tell you how to get to that for free, okay? If you notice in the chat box, what I did was, let me get out of this here, get to the CAP report. What you're going to do is you're going to go right here to CAP report. So you do a slant, do CAP report, and you get the college money report in 5 minutes. You get your free report at the bottom. There is no paywall to get there. All you have to do is click on Get My Free Report, start it up, you put your parent student, the dots kind of guide you through which page you're on, and it'll email your report in about 5 minutes. It's pretty simple to do. All right, so what's the next thing you need to know? Okay, so if you don't need anything else from us in the meantime, what you're going to do is throw your name down here in the lower right corner. You have this little bubble, and it says, got any questions? I'm happy to help. It's not monitored all the time, but we like to tell people, look, if you have a quick thing or a quick question you want to that's on your mind, or you can't book a time, or you want to know more about our service, we're happy to call you. Put your name and put what you want in the chat box with your email address in there. It'll send it to our system. We'll pick it up and we'll be sure and get in contact with you. So if you would do that, that's a really good tool we use. We monitor that box all the time. In fact, everything's aggregated together. I'm kind of in charge of some of this stuff, so I know where it goes. But I want to let you know that that's where you're going to find that, how to get in touch with us. Okay, this is our webpage. We love to have you go here to find the different things that we do, the resources that you need. So again, if you the important points tonight, what are the things, the big takeaways? Really simply, I can tell you the big takeaways are this, right? Number one, know your expected family contribution, the EFC. That's very, very important. You've got to figure that out before. It's beginning with the end in mind, because you guys you're going to be spending tons of money on college. It's not cheap. It's buying a house. And most people really just are not comfortable with making those payments, knowing what's going to happen in the future. Like we talked about earlier in the video, if what you knew to be true turned out not to be true, when would you want to know? That's what the College Money Report does for you. Get it. It's free. We're offering it because this is the season where there's not a lot of parents engaging us, where we give special offers to our clients. When we head towards summer and in the fall, I tell you, it gears up very quickly. As soon as we hit July, we're running all the way to December. So you guys are in a great position to do this. Okay. If there's does anybody have any questions? I'll look at the chat box real quick to see if there's any questions. Sorry, I've disappeared off the one I wanted to go. There I am. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? Let's see. Hopefully we answered all of them. Okay, I know it's a little bit past our time and everybody's getting towards pumpkin hour. Especially one of my boys. I've got two boys here, so one in high school, one going about to be in middle school next year. So I got one college bound here in a couple years. So shout out to John Paul II High School, where he goes to school. They won 3 state championships in the last couple of weeks in Texas. One for boys basketball, and the girls basketball did it the same day. And the girls soccer just did it on Tuesday. So it's really awesome. I always like to give a shout out to them. I know that a few of them watch this from our school. So anyway, all right, guys. So I'm going to call it a night for you. Again, you can see on the slide, do something today that your future self will thank you for. Okay, that's very, very true. We do want to thank you for my team, Douglas, myself, Veronica, David, Al from our extended team, and Darla. They're all here to help you and serve you at any point. We'd love to chat with you in the future. We'll be sure and follow up. Be sure and tell your friends, family, other parents that need to know about this. We have immense resources. We've been doing this for 20 years, and we just want to do the right thing for you and your family about college planning, especially because this is really, really expensive next to buying a house. So if anything, I'm going to leave this up for anybody to write down the information. Again, procollegeplanners.com, click the big red button to book with us, and complete your college money report /cap report is how you get the free version, not the paid version. Don't pay for it, and then if you talk to us, we'll refund it anyway, so that's okay. If you click the big red button and you book with us as well, don't forget, we'll have you complete the cap report anyway, because that's mostly the conversation that we want to have with you to understand that. So otherwise, you guys have a wonderful evening. It was great to have so many people on. I know it's right before spring break. I know we're leaving next Monday for Florida. So hope you guys have a great week and weekend and next week. Good night.